This is Adam and Sangtong Tanilian. You can call her Nook, no relationship to any English word. She's from Thailand originally, I'm from the United States, and for several years we've been working in Saudi Arabia, where I teach English at the university and she cooks food for people on our compound. And there are some things to do. We get out into the desert. It's fun-ish, but it's more or less one note. It's very hot, so when we got the opportunity last summer, we took off to the United States, my home country, rented the Dodge, got in the car, hit the road. Our first stop was Kentucky. And sure enough, that blue moon was shining on us. So we had got to Canyon Falls, Kentucky, in the Daniel Boone National Forest around the time of a gas shortage in the South. And so I drove through this small town on the way to our park destination, and we were getting low on gas, taking off from Michigan, and I'm not sure if I filled up between Kentucky and Michigan. And so driving out into the forest, I actually turned around to get some gas because there were in fact some shortages, some lines at gas stations and quite a few with no gas whatsoever in the pumps. But we arrived at our destination safe and sound all the same. Traveling through the forests and hills of Kentucky, it's really quite beautiful. And on our first day of our road trip, it was really nice to get out and see some green after so many months and even years in Saudi Arabia, where there is very little green, to say the least. It is a kingdom in beige over here. So the rolling hills and somewhat less majestic falls than Niagara were a welcome reprieve from the desert sun and heat and more or less desolate conditions, though again, it is beautiful in many places around the world, and our trip across the United States showed us the grandeur and majesty of our country from coast to coast, north to south. We hit some traffic going south through Atlanta on our way to our next destination in Indian Springs Park in Georgia. But that traffic cleared up, and luckily we were on the road at a time when traffic was actually at a minimum with the pandemic still popping off, and we avoided several cities, mostly kept off the main highways. But it was a lot of driving, so we got a clear view from the road, listened to lots of tunes, lots of podcasts, spent a lot of time in the bucket seats of the Dodge.
Hey, buddy.
After Indian Springs, we went down to Manatee Springs in Florida, where we met some local wildlife amid the palms and other subtropical foliage there. One of the themes across the country is how much wildlife there is at our national and state parks. And while it is an incredibly big country with a fairly large population, there is so much nature to marvel at. We took a nice kayak trip on the river there at Manatee Springs. We met up with some other local wildlife. Just generally enjoyed the views. Beautiful sunshine, clear, fresh water. We saw some baby alligators, a lot of birds, no manatees. It was not the right season for the manatees. But we were well off into our 24, 25-day road trip, hitting several national parks and state parks across the country. Big tour of a big country on the cheap by staying at local, national, state parks.
We sort of camouflages as a flower.
Hmm?
He kind of camouflages as a
And so it was becoming apparent already from our trip through
Look at another
southern
guy.
Michigan, Ohio,
on a
Kentucky,
tree.
Tennessee, Georgia, and into Florida,
Put
that the landscape,
three
the
white
flora and
tails
fauna
around.
change, and these changes and these transitions would only become more apparent across the country. After staying a night at Fort DeSoto, we took off, after staying a night at Manatee Springs, we took off across Tampa Bay to see one of my dad's friends south of Tampa Bay, and then back up for a night into Fort DeSoto, right on the beach there near Tampa Bay. And then the next day off to Gulf Shores, Alabama, just across from Pensacola. Beautiful, beautiful country on the northern Gulf of Mexico. Again, seeing different types of trees than we would see up north. Much different landscapes, natural dunes, lazy seaside villages, and what would have been fairly populated tourist towns, which were more or less desolate because of the pandemic. So we got a nice view of the nature, which is what we were out seeking for. The pier the next day, after a night at Gulf Shores State Park, was rather windy. So we took a walk up and down the pier, enjoyed the surf, along with the other few visitors. This was before the CDC lifted its mask mandate, and so as we drove across the country, we saw several changes to guidelines regarding how vaccinated people should conduct themselves in public. But outdoors, we were more or less maskless. And so that was the beginning of our road trip, and we were well on our way to enjoying the entire country, which the Chinese call beautiful country, Meigua.